If you were Andrew Carnegie, from poverty to greatness, standing at the peak. The year is 1901. It's 1901. You're standing there by the window of a luxurious New York office, looking down at the bustling crowd below. Newspapers all over the world are dedicating their front pages to you. You have just executed the largest deal in history, becoming one of the richest people on the planet. But your mind is not in the present. It is drifting back in time, returning to the days when no one believed you would amount to anything. Returning to the days when your family did not have a single penny. Returning to the image of a poor immigrant boy from Scotland. Today, you are no longer an observer. You are Andrew Carnegie, and this is the path you took to become the Steel King of America. Before we begin this journey, if you also enjoy discovering the secrets behind the success of extraordinary people, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a simple action, but it helps this channel reach more people who are striving to achieve greater things in life, just like you. And now, imagine opening your eyes one morning and realizing that you are that person. The journey begins. Chapter 1. The decision to leave. The year is 1848, and you are 13 years old. In the town of Dunfermline, the Industrial Revolution is surging like a flood, crushing old handicraft values. Your father, a skilled weaver, suddenly became obsolete in the face of faster, cheaper machines. Every family meal was a confrontation with the fear: how do we survive? Finally, your family made a painful decision: to leave behind your homeland, your friends, and everything familiar to go to America. Standing on the ship crossing the Atlantic, watching Scotland fade into the mist, you had no idea that you would never return. At that moment, you learned your first lesson. To have a new future, you must be brave enough to leave the past behind. Chapter 2. The Grit of a Factory Boy. America did not welcome you with chocolate and roses. It welcomed you with backbreaking labor. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, in a cotton mill with stifling heat and the deafening sound of machinery. That was your reality at age 13. A wage of $1 a week was mere existence, not life. Many accepted that fate, but you did not. When other workers collapsed from exhaustion, you turned to books. History, business, philosophy. These pages became your greatest teachers. You realized a truth. The poor cannot buy advantages, but they can learn to create them. Chapter 3. The Art of Opportunity. Every step is a lesson. The cotton mill with its screaming machinery could not hold your mind forever. One day, opportunity knocked. A telegraph company needed a messenger. You seized it without hesitation. You understood that to enter the world of the wealthy, you could not just look in from the factory window. This new job was not just weary walking across the streets of Pittsburgh. It was a master key that allowed you to step into sacred grounds that a poor boy was never permitted to approach. Luxurious bank offices, imposing railway company headquarters, and powerful business offices. Once, you were tasked with delivering an urgent telegram to the desk of one of the region's most powerful bankers. You still vividly remember the feeling of your hands shaking as you entered that room, filled with the scent of fine wood, premium cigars, and authoritative silence. The businessman did not even look up. He was intently analyzing a railway map on his table, muttering numbers about interest rates and shipping deadlines. Standing there, in those few seconds of waiting for a signature, you copied a lesson worth a fortune. You realized that the wealthy do not work by clocking out. They work by looking at systems, by looking at networks of connections. In their heads, there is no concept of a monthly salary, only the concept of asset efficiency. You walked out of that office with your heart pounding, not out of fear, but out of excitement. You had just seen your own future. Every day after that, you were no longer just a messenger. You were an apprentice spy. You observed how they negotiated, how they kept their cool in the face of bad news, and how they seized opportunities when the market moved. You memorized every face, every decisive gesture, every way they issued orders. You realized that the business world does not run on muscle. It runs on information, relationships, and the ability to forecast. Gradually, Pittsburgh was no longer a strange city. It became a chessboard where you knew every position by heart. You understood how cash flowed between steel mills and how railways transported raw materials. That was practical business skill that no textbook could teach you. At this point, you were no longer the poor boy from Scotland. You were an apprentice gathering the most important pieces to build the mindset of an investor. Every telegram you delivered, every office you stepped into, was a valuable lesson on the operating rules of the American economy. You had started to understand this game, and more importantly, you were ready to become a part of it. Chapter 4, The Life Changer. The Lesson of Ownership Mindset. If the messenger trips were an observational school, the arrival of Thomas Scott was the turning point that elevated you to a new level. He was a senior leader of the Pennsylvania Railroad Corporation, a man whose eyes could see the potential in anyone he met. He didn't see a poor boy in old clothes. He saw a burning desire and a keen mindset far beyond your years. One day, Scott called you over. Instead of giving you a telegram, he gave you an opportunity. He began training you, not to be a servant assistant, but to become a true right-hand man. But the most valuable lesson he taught you was not about coordinating trains or managing personnel. He sat down, pointed to the map of the vast railway system, and said, "My boy, look, those who are hired sell their time in exchange for survival. But those who truly own this economy, they do not work for money. They work to own the system." That was the moment your worldview was completely overturned. Up until then, you thought money was a reward for hours of hard labor, like how your father had sweated over the loom. But Thomas Scott opened up a different truth. Money is a tool, and assets are the lifeblood. He explained to you the power of investment. He showed you how capital can self-propagate when placed into assets that create real value, like railways, steel, or shipping. You started to understand that the wealthy are always those who hold ownership shares. They do not need to directly touch every operation. They own the machine that generates the money. The more you learned, the more you felt the change in how you saw the world. Every train passing by was no longer just a transport vehicle, but a flow of money. Every factory rising was not just bricks and stone, but an income-generating asset. Your mindset shifted from employee to owner. Thomas Scott didn't just teach you how to earn money. He taught you how to see opportunity in the chaos of industrialization. He planted in your mind the seed of investment, a seed that would later help you build an empire. You were no longer the boy delivering telegrams for others. You were preparing yourself to become the one ordering your own future. Every piece of his advice was like a shingle on your roof of thought, helping you stand firm and look further than anyone else of your time. You began to realize success is not a destination. It is the result of owning the right assets at the right time. Chapter 5, The First Investment. When money starts working. After understanding Thomas Scott's philosophy, a practical investment opportunity came to you. This was no longer theory, but a deal that required you to place a bet. However, you lacked the capital. You stood before a choice: give up or risk borrowing from your mother. It was a nerve-wracking decision. If you failed, you would lose your savings and your mother's trust. But the desire to escape the cycle of poverty gave you the courage. You accepted the risk and invested. Then a miracle happened. The investment started paying dividends. When the first money flowed into your pocket without needing to be traded for hours of labor, everything changed. You officially held the secret of the wealthy. They do not sell time. They own assets so that assets work for them. That moment opened a door in your mind. You understood that anyone can master their destiny if they know how to make money serve them. This was the foundational lesson, the first brick that helped you build the empire later. Chapter 6: Civil War and the Greatest Opportunity, Profiting from the System. In 1861, the American Civil War broke out, splitting the country in two. While the nation was engulfed in smoke, fire, and anxiety, you stood in a different position. As Thomas Scott's associate, you witnessed firsthand the trains carrying soldiers, food, and weapons, moving continuously like the unstoppable arteries of the nation. Many around you saw only war, destruction, and broken bridges. But you, with the mindset of someone who had learned to own assets, saw the difference: infrastructure. You realized that in the most critical moments, everything depends on the railway. That was when you concluded a valuable lesson, one that would later bring you millions of dollars. The wealthiest people never make money from isolated events. They make money from the system behind those events. You did not chase war news. You focused on ensuring the transport system operated as smoothly as possible. You observed how a nation functions when backed into a corner, how demand for materials skyrockets, and how scarcity becomes an opportunity for those who provide solutions. You knew that the war would have to end, and America, after the ruins, would need to be rebuilt from scratch. That was not an end. It was the beginning of a great era of construction. You started to ask the question, what material will be the backbone of that future? Not wood, and no longer iron. Your eyes started to turn toward a new, potentially full material: steel. Chapter 6 teaches you that, in crisis, there are always opportunities that the naked eye cannot see. Ordinary people see loss. Those who master systems see reconstruction. You were no longer the fearful messenger boy of years past. You had started learning to see the big picture of a whole nation. That was when you abandoned the mindset of an employee and began to think like an empire builder. Chapter 7: Seeing the Future. When you bet the whole empire. In the 1860s, most of America still used iron, a material that was prone to bending, breaking, and struggled to meet the speed of rapid development. When the Bessemer process appeared in Europe, many saw it as a minor technical improvement. But you saw a whole future: steel bridges, skyscrapers, and railways spanning the country. You realized the truth. If America were to be built of steel, then the supplier of steel would hold the key to the nation's power. That was when you decided to bet everything. You poured all your resources into mastering steel production technology. This was not recklessness, but the confidence of one who understood how the economy operates. This chapter teaches you that vision is not prediction, but the ability to see what others consider impossible, to turn it into reality. You are no longer chasing money. You are building a foundation for a legacy that will last for centuries. Chapter 8: Building the Steel Empire. The obsession with efficiency. After betting on steel, the following years were a series of days without rest. You built factories, expanded production, and continuously put the most modern technology into operation. While competitors were satisfied with immediate profits, you chose a different path, reinvesting all profits back into the enterprise. You were obsessed with efficiency. To you, the production process was an optimization problem. If a small improvement could save a cent on each product, you would apply it immediately to millions of units. If a new technology helped shorten production time, you would deploy it without a second of hesitation. Gradually, Carnegie Steel became not only the largest steel company in America, but also the largest in the world. Railways stretching across the country, steel bridges spanning large rivers, and modern cities rising rapidly, all bore the mark of Carnegie Steel. Chapter 8 teaches you a classic business lesson. In the long run, the winner is not the one with the highest momentary profit, but the one with the ability to best optimize costs and processes. You turned the obsession with efficiency into an absolute competitive advantage, bringing your steel empire to dominate the market. Chapter 9. The richest person in the industrial world. When money is no longer everything. By the end of the 19th century, Andrew Carnegie's name was famous globally, and the press called you the Steel King. Your fortune increased dizzyingly year by year, turning your business into a massive profit-generating machine. However, what made you different from other businessmen of the time was not the wealth, but how you thought about it. While others were busy chasing a lavish lifestyle, you chose to spend most of your time reflecting, reading, and analyzing future fluctuations. You started to ask philosophical questions of yourself. How much money does a person really need to feel enough? And after reaching the peak of fame, what truly creates lasting value for a human being? These very concerns laid the foundation for the most important turning point in your life. Chapter 10. The Historic Deal. When you merge an empire. In 1901, you faced J.P. Morgan in a quiet room in New York. This financial tycoon did not come to oppose. He came to propose a game-changing move, merging all individual steel mills into a single entity, the United States Steel Corporation, U.S. Steel. You understood Morgan's goal clearly. He wanted to control the entire supply chain, from iron ore and cargo ships to the final smelting furnaces to eliminate chaotic competition. Your Carnegie Steel, with its superior efficiency, was the gem he had to have to realize that ambition. In those intense hours of negotiation, you did not look at Morgan as a hunter. You saw an inevitable change in business history. The era of individual investors was closing, giving way to the era of multinational corporations. If you had kept Carnegie Steel, you could have continued to win in price wars, but you would forever be a lone wolf on your own path. When you agreed to merge into U.S. Steel for $480 million, you didn't just sell an asset. You were ending one era to open a new economic order. The figure of $480 million, an unimaginable sum at the time, was the price to reshape the entire American industry. This was approximately 2.1% of the U.S. gross domestic product, GDP, at the time, equivalent to $646 billion in 2026. The moment you signed the contract, you sold the tangible empire to buy absolute freedom. Many asked if you had any regrets seeing your brainchild dissolve into U.S. Steel. You only smiled. You didn't see loss, you saw evolution. You concluded a profound truth. A true master of the game is not one who always wants to own everything, but one who knows when to build and when to transfer to create greater value for the entire system. That was when you cast off the title of Steel King to enter your second life. You sold the company, but you had just purchased the power to redefine the wealth of all humanity. Chapter 11. The Gospel of Wealth. The Responsibility of the Master. In 1889, while your steel empire was at the peak of glory, you shocked the world with an essay titled The Gospel of Wealth. In an era when industrial billionaires often chose flashy lifestyles or amassed huge fortunes to leave to their descendants, your point of view was a breath of fresh air, controversial but full of humanity. You wrote, "The man who dies rich dies disgraced." This was not criticism, but a wake-up call about the meaning of success. You believed that if you left too large a fortune for your descendants, you wouldn't just be failing to help them, but would also be depriving them of the motivation to strive, to rise, and to assert their own position. Instead of leaving money, you chose to give opportunity. You deeply understood that just one door opening, a book, a library, or a training course at the right time, could permanently change a person's life. You understood the thirst for knowledge of the poor immigrant boy you once were, and you wanted to ensure that millions of others would not have to endure that shortage anymore. Chapter 11 is the most important turning point in your soul. You redefined wealth not as a number in an account, but as the influence and legacy you leave to the world. From a steel king who knew only efficiency and profit, you transformed into an architect of the future, where you used your own achievements to liberate the potential for millions of others. Chapter 12, the giver of wealth, leaving an immortal legacy. When you truly entered your second life, you didn't waste a single moment. You started executing the commitment you wrote in the Gospel of Wealth at an astonishing speed. If before, the obsession with efficiency helped you build a steel empire, then now, that obsession was used to build wisdom for humanity. You believed that everyone has the ability to rise, provided they have the tools to learn. And the tool you chose was libraries. You sponsored the construction of over 2,500 public libraries worldwide. You didn't just throw money into brick and stone, you planted seeds of knowledge in the poorest lands so that any child, regardless of their background, could find knowledge as a companion. You founded educational funds, sponsored scientific research, and strove to promote world peace. As the years of your life passed, you were no longer the man owning billions of dollars. You were the one who had given away most of that money. You sold the steel empire, but you bought back the respect of millions and left behind a legacy that cannot be erased by time. Looking back at the whole journey, from a poor boy delivering telegrams to the position of Steel King and finally a distinguished philanthropist, you realized that true wealth is not measured by what you hold in your hand, but by what you have given to life. You completed the full life cycle of a master, starting from zero, learning to master systems, reaching the peak of finance, and finally using that wealth to elevate the world. Your journey is not just a story of getting rich. It is a lesson on the maturity of a soul that is grateful and eager to contribute. Final lesson. Today, looking back at the journey from a poor boy to the Steel King, you realize success does not come from one great decision, but from the sum of thousands of small decisions made every day. If you hadn't left Scotland, if you hadn't found books, if you hadn't dared to borrow money from your mother to invest, life would have taken a different turn. Carnegie built an empire, but he left the world not just steel, but a legacy of giving. Finally, success is not measured by what you own, but by what you leave for humanity. That is the greatest investment of a lifetime. Thank you for joining us on today's journey. This story may have come to an end, but the journey of extraordinary people never truly stops. There are still countless lessons, decisions, and moments that changed history waiting to be discovered. The next chapter may arrive sooner than most people expect. If you enjoy exploring the mindset, habits, and secrets behind the world's greatest achievers, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a simple action, but it helps us continue creating inspiring stories for people who are always striving to achieve more in life. And who knows, in the next episode, you may wake up in the life of another legend. We'll see you in the next journey.